All right, hello guys. Let me know if you can hear the stream and all that nonsense like you guys usually always do. The stream's gonna mostly be figuring on kind of the new trailer we saw for House of the Dragon, which I think was a very interesting trailer, just based upon the fact that it looks like they're showing us a lot of footage from later episodes in the season, not just like next week or I guess this week. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was I don't know, it's weird because like Game of Thrones was weird in the way of like when we got trailers, it was usually for the next episode. This one definitely wasn't. So I'm gonna kind of be interested in what you guys think on what the next episode is going to be about because I thought the main thing that we would get in the next episode would be maybe Rhaenyra's marriage or her maybe the announcement of who she's going to be marrying. But at the same time, that kind of feels a bit rushed, especially with the Kristen Cole storyline. It feels pretty rushed to talk about that in episode 2. Maybe that gets pushed to episode 3, but that was something that I thought was a little interesting. Um, Something else that I thought was a bit interesting that we'll be looking at in episode 2 is, are we going to get kind of more of the war with the Triarchy and the Stepstones with Daemon? They showed a lot of things in the trailers that lead me to believe that that's probably what that's going to be about. That we're probably gonna need some more kind of scenes on that and more time spent in that, because in the first episode they kind of teased it a little. We didn't really get much information on it, so I hope that we do get to see more of that. Another thing I'd be interested to actually see is going to be kind of more of Rhaenys and Corlys Velaryon. Hopefully we get more of them, because if you guys didn't know, what ends up happening is Daemon and Corlys Velaryon end up kind of teaming up, and they're the ones that mainly are focused on this war in the Stepstones, and kind of the rest of Westeros doesn't help them. It's one of those things where Viserys is like, okay, this is good for Daemon. He gets to kind of play at war and all these things. And it's one of these interesting wars where the Targaryens and the Velaryons are very much outmanned. And we see really, it's like another preview of how important the dragons are and how, when they're used efficiently, they can kind of win wars to some degree. So that is kind of the idea there, that I think we're going to see a bit more in episode 2. Now, other things I think we're going to see in episode 2 are going to be things like Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole's relationship kind of increase, right? So Rhaenyra eventually gets Kristen Cole as like her personal bodyguard, and they kind of get close. We don't know how close. We don't know. This is one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to see in the show, is what direction they take it, because again, spoilers. So again, if you don't want to hear spoilers, if you're rewatching the stream or if you're in the stream now, I would probably get off of the stream. But Kristen Cole and Rhaenyra eventually have a falling out. And there's kind of two ways you take it. It's either one where Rhaenyra gets her marriage, right? It's not the marriage she wants. It's a very bad match. By the way, hi, Matthew. How are you? And she kind of goes to Kristen Cole and she seeks male companionship. And then Kristen Cole is like, nah, this ain't for me. And does all those things trying to uphold his like vows. Or you take it the way I think it probably happened, just based upon how Kristen Cole acts after the event, where Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole, one way or another, are in this room together, or whatever, and Kristen Cole kind of comes on to her and has feelings for her, and Rhaenyra turns him down, saying, she's basically supposed to become the queen. She can't really do this with the Kingsguard. And if you look at the way things kind of play out after that event, were described as Kristen Cole being very angry and all that stuff, and Rhaenyra is kind of not that way. Rhaenyra seems a bit more mature and like holding herself together better. So I think off of those events, you would assume that Kristen Cole, it would be the one that kind of got denied or rejected in that scenario. But who knows? I'm interested to see where the show takes that. Now, again, I don't think we're going to get any of that in episode 2. I'd be very surprised if we had all of the Kristen Cole like relationship building in one episode and then have it kind of do its thing by the end of that episode. I think what we're going to see in episode 2 is we're going to see more of Alicent and Viserys' kind of growing relationship. Possibly they get married by the end of the episode, or maybe in the middle or something around there. I can see that happening, because we have to remember that by episode 10, things have to hit the fan. Like, Viserys needs to be probably dead by episode 8 to 9. Again, heavy spoilers, so I'm going to continue to say that. We have a lot of spoilers in this stream. This is not like a spoiler-free type thing. We're going to be talking spoilers. And I think Viserys has to be dead by episode probably 8. I'd say that's probably the longest you can wait, because then you're going to have shit hit the fan and the repercussions of his death in episode 9. Episode 10, you could get into the big 2 things that kickstart the Dance of Dragons and then lead that into season 2. That's how probably I would end the Dance of the Dragon, or House of the Dragon, season 1. But if we look at the way we kind of have to get there, I could see it maybe by the end of episode 2, where we have Viserys and Alicent's marriage. Do you think they will use flashbacks of the young actors later in the season, or will they jump ahead by episode 3? I think they should just jump ahead. Personally, I think that would be better. I think they will probably go that route where they just jump ahead, because the way the storytelling they're going right now, where I like that they're making all these relationships, we're not really getting interrupted, which is something very different from Game of Thrones, where Game of Thrones, we had a lot of these relationships took a while to develop, because we had Jon, and then we had all these other things going on. So that's one thing I think House of the Dragon is going for, where it can focus on a lot of these characters and a lot of that things going on like that. So I think they will just do the jump and be done with the younger characters. Do you think Storm's End and Blood and Cheese will be the season finale? I do think so, yes. I think that's probably the final episode. Maybe we get... Also, again, Matthew and everybody in the chat, I don't think... I'm going to say it multiple times in this stream. We don't really care about spoilers here. Like, I feel like most of my audience knows what's going to happen anyway, but for new viewers, if you don't want to hear spoilers, I'd probably leave the stream. I'll do more like spoiler-free stuff probably Saturday right before the episode. Also, you guys are getting stuff. I just realized this. You guys are getting a video / stream from me every day this week, so that's... Yeah, you guys enjoy that. But yeah, no, I think we could see Storm's End maybe the end of episode 9, and then have the repercussions leading into Blood and Cheese on episode 10. I could see that. But yeah. By the way, how are you, Jesse? But yeah, I think episode 3 probably is the last episode for the young actors. I think we'll see the splitting in the relationship of Rhaenyra and Alicent around episode 3, along with the Criston Cole stuff. And then I think episode 4 through 7 will kind of focus on, we have these parties, we have the Greens, the Blacks, and how they continuously are fighting at each other and all that stuff. Oh, I know, I'm just playing. I know you do, Matthew, but I know. But yeah, so it's an interesting idea there, where you have episode 4 through 7, where we're going to have a lot of things going on, where we have multiple people, where they get married to different people. Things end up happening quite differently that pisses off people. As we'll see with Daemon. Daemon's a character that's very interesting, because he's going to be away from King's Landing quite a bit. He's going to come back to King's Landing, and then he's going to go somewhere else, which is going to lead to a different kind of relationship going on. I'm being very vague, because in those things where it's like I can avoid saying a spoiler, you know. But yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see the way those episodes play out, because I think those are the most impactful episodes, because they're kind of your middle of the pack episodes where you don't have a ton going on. It's a lot of politics, a lot of setting up for the last couple episodes. So that's going to be, I think, the time where they really got to make sure they're building up the characters. Whereas I complained in episode 1, we really didn't get a lot of Corlys Velaryon or Rhaenys. I think we'll get a lot more of them in episode 2 and 3, especially when you kind of have the splitting of where we're going to see a lot of our characters, where in episode 1, they're all together. Daemon now leaving, going to, he's going to make a little stop at Dragonstone, as we've seen in the trailer. He then, he's going to make some things in the Stepstones, but we're also going to see him a lot more with the Velaryons. So we'll have kind of that plot going on alongside of the Rhaenyra, Alicent, Viserys, and Otto kind of storyline. So we're going to have 2 little parts there. IDK why, but I get the vibes. The reason he ends up switching sides is because he has a thing for Alicent, but then again, he did give his token to Rhaenyra during the tourney. They could also go that route, but I feel like it's just something that in the book Fire and Blood, and with we know with the director is really wanting to stay close to the book, I think it makes a lot of sense to just go with that route of either Rhaenyra denies Criston Cole or Criston Cole denies Rhaenyra, and that's what splits them apart. How are you, House of the Stag? I'm pretty good, you know, just doing the normal stream, just doing a little bit of a preview. We're going to be talking about Rings of Power a little later on in the video when we get done with, or stream, why did I say video? When we get done with kind of the House of the Dragon stuff, because House of the Dragon stuff will always be in the forefront. I just kind of want to do a little bit about Rings of Power towards the end, because I like it. I'm not, okay, I like Lord of the Rings. I don't think I'm going to like Rings of Power. I'm trying to keep an open mind, but yeah. I hope the time skips are not too confusing for casual viewers. Rome did time skips of years between episodes with very little explanation. Yeah, I think it should be fine, because I think it's one of those things where when you kind of get back from the time skip, right? And it's something I think we saw in the trailer. I'm not 100%, I don't remember completely, but I think we see kind of Viserys in like an older looking Viserys where he's kind of getting closer to death. So it's going to be interesting to see. Another thing I'm interested to see on the route of Viserys' death. There was a rumor in Fire and Blood that Viserys was actually kind of poisoned or killed in that route. So it's going to be interesting to see if they decide to go that route. Because there's a lot of things, and this is the one thing we talked about in House of the Stags video. I didn't personally talk about it, but is when you're adapting Fire and Blood specifically, there's so many different routes you could go. Right, where there's situations where you can kind of take the route that Daemon's kind of the villain type character. You can kind of tell it from the Hightowers being the good guys route, but you, oh, sorry, Mike. But you can also kind of go more of a neutral way, or you can do it more where you're leaning towards the blacks and how events kind of happen. But I think after episode 2, there shouldn't really be any more time skips. Maybe don't quote me on that. So you think we're going to go to adult Rhaenyra after episode 2, Matthew? Because I personally just don't think so. Because they have a decent amount of things that they are going to have to accomplish in this time. And I just don't think fitting it all into episode 2 is a good idea. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that. What do you guys think? How long should we stay in the younger versions of Rhaenyra and Alicent's timeline? Hi, Uncle Dave. How are you? Because for me, I think they should give it to at least 3. I think at least episode 3, and then you have episode 4, 5, 6, kind of with your development and increasing the tension between the blacks and the greens, using as those kind of not filler episodes, but kind of the episodes where not a ton happens really. And then you have kind of episode 7 or 8 where they decide to, you know, Viserys ends up dying, and you can have the things after that happen. But I'll be interested to see where they go with that. Yeah, I think so. I'm just saying that because I saw older Rhaenyra in the previous. So the thing with that is, though, with the trailer, is that was showing multiple episodes. Right, so that was showing episodes in the future that we are not going to... Like, there's things that were in that trailer we're not going to see next week. Yeah, I think so. I'm just... Or no, I already read that. We can see a very pregnant Alicent in the weeks ahead thing, so I think we're going to have a smaller time jump soon. Okay, that makes sense. I'm guessing 3 or 4 episodes, then the skip. Okay. George is so biased towards the blacks. It's almost annoying how OP the... Okay, so I disagree. I disagree, Jesse. Now, for one thing, okay, let me take that back. I would say George does like the blacks more, but at the same time, if you look at the way Fire and Blood is like red almost, if you're reading it, almost everything kind of comes from the Greens' point of view, because you have to remember the Maesters are on the Hightower side, right? They're on the Green side. And this is something I point out a lot in my Maester Conspiracy series. If you look at how Daemon is shown as a character in A Fire and Blood compared to how he is in the show. In the book, Fire and Blood, Daemon is this character that is almost unnecessarily hated. We don't see a lot for why there should be this, because Daemon is a character that right off the bat, we're kind of told to not like, right? Otto Hightower doesn't like Daemon for what reasons in the book, and it's like there's this rumor that he may have slept with Alicent. The show didn't go that route. Otto hates him for different reasons, and what I like about the show is you get more of why people may dislike Daemon. We see more of his actions. We kind of see more behind the scenes, because Fire and Blood, we're looking at it from a history point of view. So we're not getting into his character. We're going off of the actions we can maybe see. So if you look at Daemon's Golden Cloaks thing, I don't like the way the show did it. I've talked about that. But in the book, right, that's something that the Maesters are very much against, right, where like the way he did it. But I don't know. It's something that I don't know if I would go that route, because the Greens, in my opinion, have their own things that work really well for them. They have Vhagar, like Uncle Dave says, where Vhagar is such like, he's the only of the main three kind of dragons still left, and he's just overwhelming to that point, where the Blacks, their kind of downfall and the pitfall there is some things on Rhaenyra's inaction, where I'm not going to name names, but a certain character is going to die, and it's almost based upon Rhaenyra's inaction. And we know why Rhaenyra has that inaction. Certain things happen to her that are very traumatic, to say the least. We've already seen that with how Rhaenyra kind of loses her mother, but there are things that kind of happen that kind of equal it out a little. I think the season is 50-50. 5 episodes with the younger versions and 5 with the adult versions. I could definitely see that, and that would make a lot of sense. Agree with you on that, Matthew, about the Blacks being too OP. I think the Blacks are weird, because I think you have a great naval commander in Corlys Velaryon, right? But because of kind of his role and what he has to do, he's not always there to give counsel. He's not always there to do all those things. And same with Daemon. Daemon's kind of like your military leader. So then it comes to this idea where, okay, we have to do something, right? Dragonstone and all this. Rhaenyra is kind of your person in charge. But again, as I talked about, a lot of things go wrong with Rhaenyra, where she kind of has a lot of inaction, where she's not willing to do certain things. And it kind of leads to this problem of leadership. Whereas on the other side of it, you kind of feel like there's multiple people that are in King's Landing kind of doing these things. And even though eventually they are going to lose battles against, Daemon, because again, Daemon is just an awesome character, but that whole kind of idea, and I'm not trying to go too far into it, because it's into a ton of spoilers of really major things, and I kind of want to avoid that, but at the same time, like, I'm open to talking about it, but I don't know. Daemon doesn't seem that bad until he kills Vaemon Velaryon, and then blood and cheese happens. Someone told me of today that everyone was afraid of having another Maegor. So let me rephrase how I was talking about that, Jesse. Me as a reader, and I think a lot of people as readers, think Daemon's a very interesting character and cool character. But the way he's talked about by the narrator and a lot of that makes it seem like we're supposed to hate him. Let's put it that way. It's kind of the way they did the Golden Cloaks thing, where Daemon, it almost seems like Daemon's beating up innocent people and stuff like that, and doing these things that don't really make any sense. And then we get to the council meeting, and you find out all these people were actual criminals. And then it kind of makes a bit more sense, whereas Daemon sees that there's a lot of crime going on. He sees kind of corruption, and all these things he's kind of right on. It's just he takes it to an extreme, almost. Agreed, Dave. Agreed. And that's one thing that's another thing that is tough for the Blacks, is that when they start getting alliances and all these things, the big problem for a lot of people, and it's a justified problem, if you're someone that's a lord of a castle, and this Dance of the Dragon starts. What is your biggest fear, right? Because in normal warfare, let's look at Game of Thrones, for instance. Storm's End, right? You can leave a garrison there and for the most part be fine, right? Unless you have some freak thing happen like Stannis. In the Dance of Dragons, where you have dragons that can come down and create another Harrenhal, think about how that affects how you do warfare, right? Where you have lords and stuff like that. They're going to be saying, we need dragons to protect us so that Daemon doesn't come and just burn us down or make us kind of surrender or something like that, or even the other way around with Aemon One Eye. So all of those things are going to be interesting to talk about when you look at warfare and how different it really is at this point compared to a Game of Thrones, which is something I really hope that they get into in the show. I've always liked the blacks over the greens, but this show and its characters might make me flip sides. Just call me Kristen Cole. Maybe. Matthew, I'm going to be honest. I don't know, for you guys that saw my Instagram post, Rhaenyra is my favorite Targaryen, so I'm always going to be with Rhaenyra. I really hope that they do her character justice. They do a lot of things, and it's not like a Tyrion thing, where Tyrion was a character I liked on the show, but then by the second half of it, you kind of see the flaws of his character, where they didn't develop things early on that kind of hurt him. I really hope that with Rhaenyra, and even Daemon as well, that they don't whitewash their characters, which I don't think I have too many issues with right now, because I think they're doing Daemon really well. But when Rhaenyra starts having things happen to her that are very traumatic and tragic, that they don't go the wrong route with her character, kind of stick to where she kind of becomes a very morally gray character. The one guy does call out thief before they take hands and rape. Yeah, So I did hear that. And for me, I was like, when I saw the scene, right, I was like, okay, I guess a lot of these people are, but it just felt like the way some of the shots were, where they just were kind of going into people's houses, or they were just going to random people in the streets and just beating people up to beat people up. I heard those things, but at the same time, I wasn't sure how that was going, right? I don't know. Maybe that's why army sizes were so small during the dance. Everyone left most of their men at home versus the War of the Five Kings. Yeah, agreed. So it's one of those things where armies are not the big thing that wins you wars, right? Where they're helpful, right? They're very helpful, but dragons are the main way a lot of battles are won or lost. Armies are kind of used as, okay, this is where our army's going to be. We need help from a dragon, right? So you get a dragon to go to this area while maybe you attack somewhere over here, or you bait someone in to do another dragon attack. So that's the whole thing what armies are for, is armies really are not this idea that wins you battles, whereas they're kind of set up as chess pieces. If you're playing chess, armies for the most part are going to be like pawns, right? Where you're putting your pawn here. How does the other person respond? Do they bring their king or their queen up? And if so, how do you play around it? So it's a really fun idea of how warfare is fought in the dance. I'm curious how they will handle the dragon fight scenes. I am as well, because we really haven't seen a dragon fight scene. Game of Thrones tried, but you couldn't really see anything that was happening. When I was watching the episode for The Long Night or whatever, I don't even remember what it was called. I guess it was The Long Night. I don't know. But you literally I couldn't even tell which dragon was which. So how are you, Sheriff? How have you been doing? They purposely left the gold cloak scenes and the air for a day scenes ambiguous, so half us judge it one way and half us judge the other. Agreed. And I think that's an interesting idea, right? Because for me, I liked the way they did the air for a day scene way better than how it was done in the book. Because in the book, it's it was more of a rumor where the Viserys kind of just took it for fact. Whereas the show, we know what happened, but there's a lot of context around the scene. Whereas Daemon feels very much unsure of what's going on. By the way, how are you, Water? Whereas Daemon, he isn't happy. He's surrounded by his men. He's in a brothel, but he doesn't seem happy. He doesn't seem very sure of him. He doesn't seem confident, like his normal self almost. And that to me, it shows a lot of character and depth to Daemon, where he is processing what's going on. He is thinking about it. He's unsure of his position on hearing the council meeting. It's a very interesting idea. And I really love the way that they've gone with his character. He's probably one of my favorite characters to continue to build on into episode 2. Have you heard the theory by Holloway Division that Nettles was a glamour? I have never heard that theory. Now, to be fair, I haven't heard a lot of theories on Dance with the Dragons like stuff for the most part. For the most part, which is something I'm really happy about, is when I went into A Song of Ice and Fire and not Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, I had a lot of the theories already from like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. That I didn't really go into it with like a fresh like blank slate on going into building my own theories for the most part. Whereas Fire and Blood, I have like a lot of theories that I haven't really like looked at anyone else's content for. The Maester conspiracy might be the only one where I would say I've looked at other things around that time period from other people. Because for the most part, the way I crafted that Maester conspiracy theory on my channel is I literally just went through the book, like had a notepad and just went through on things that I thought were weirdly commented on or just awkward or just didn't make sense on the context of the characters at the time. There's going to be one big one that I'm not going to really talk about, but it involves Storm's End, and I think a lot of you that know what happens there will understand probably where I'm coming from. But that whole idea, I went to Preston Jacobs because I know he did a series on it, and I kind of compared what I had thought to what he had thought, and it was an interesting little thing, but that was for my own research purposes. But yeah, that's one thing I really, and that's one of the reasons I really like Fire and Blood, is because I went into it very fresh. I didn't really know a lot of the things that happen in Fire and Blood, so I was kind of able to make my own conclusions about things and stuff like that. I liked the first episode for the most part, a bit slow, but I probably only feel that way because I read Fire and Blood and I'm waiting for certain events to happen. Agreed. So, also, like the battle scenes are going to have to be well written. Agreed. But my thing here with what you said there is that I don't remember who I talked about this with in comments. Is that because it was a comment that was talking about like how there was so much exposition in the first episode. And the way I kind of defend the show on that and all of that, because you have to think about, they're not trying to reach the, I guess, super fans. Like if you're in this stream chat, you are basically a super fan. You like you're going out of your way to have more information or talk about it more in depthly than the casual viewer. The casual viewer is getting back into Game of Thrones, back into Westeros. You got to take some time to develop your characters and kind of really figure out what this time period's about and all those type of issues. So that is one thing that I think they did well. And even with that being said, if you really look at this episode was a lot more fast-paced than Game of Thrones episode 1. If you really look at like what is accomplished and what happens in one episode, yeah, because that's my one thing where this episode, yes, was slow to a degree, but it was also faster than Game of Thrones in my opinion. All right, guys, I'm going to go pee real quick. So you guys talk amongst yourselves, and I will be back. Right, I have returned. I am a super fan, but I just like the chats. Agreed. Why did I put my headset in on? I have no reason for audio, but I'm just dumb sometimes. Here we go. Let me go back up. They played Daemon very well. I think it's clear he is loyal to the family and not ambitious for the throne, but they played it ambiguous there as well. People think it's Rhaenyra Daemon struggle. Agreed. Which is the weird thing, is like they've done a like decent job of kind of showing that Otto Hightower is the real one that's like trying to manipulate events and stuff like that, while at the same time giving Daemon a lot of the, I guess, villain arc type thing. But the weird thing is that Rhaenyra and Daemon have a very healthy and good relationship, it seems like, so far. The necklace scene kind of came off as a little romantic type, but I kind of took that as like just him being a good uncle type thing, but yeah. Did Daemon leave King's Landing at the end of episode 1 because wasn't he supposed to steal an egg before he left? I think he's going to do that at Dragonstone, not at King's Landing. Would it have been better in that scene if Daemon was drunk when the heir for a day comment happened? He probably was to some degree, because Daemon was kind of drinking a little. He wasn't a brothel, so he probably did have some alcohol in him at the very least. Also, Water, you, just because of your name, you've made me think about something that we need to talk about on stream. We always talk about how we have our water. Okay. My parents they made a sin. They got Dasani water. They went from getting the top water to the bottom water. Oh boy, you guys should have been there when I was complaining. Won't he go to Dragonstone and steal an egg? That's what it looks like in the trailer. Yes, because that's where they usually keep the dragon eggs and stuff. Like they do, I guess they keep a little bit in King's Landing, because of the dragon pit and the dragons there. But I think he definitely goes to Dragonstone. IDK, if it's faster than GOT, maybe IK. There was just nothing as shocking as Bran getting yeeted. Yes, but when you think about the episode as a whole, right? Like, think about what happens in the first episode of Game of Thrones. So you have the White Walker stuff, which is really good. It's a really strong opening. I think I would definitely say it was a way better opening than House of the Dragon. But think about what happens. So you have this idea that you have the children, and we have all of these different characters to introduce each other to. Think about event-wise what happens. You have the king that comes there. Everybody's kind of in this area with banter, interacting. And then at the end, Bran gets pushed while seeing Cersei and Jaime. Not a lot really happens in that episode outside of what happens in the ending. It's more of an episode that is built on showing us who the characters are, introducing us into the world. And again, I'm not faulting Game of Thrones. It has a very good opening. But I'm saying when you look at it from the idea of slow and fast, it actually was kind of a slow episode. Let's get a poll on whether the Maesters just murdered king versus wife and kid. Oh boy, maybe, Dave, maybe. I've read each of the lore books only once. Jesse, I have read World of Ice and Fire. I've read once. I don't know lore-wise if you would consider Dunk and Egg lore, but I've read that once. And then Fire and Blood I have read 3 times technically. Well, I would almost say 4 times, because when I was doing a Maester Conspiracy, I read through like a good half of it, but I don't know. But I'm pretty sure I heard the egg he took was in King's Landing, probably for Viserys' son. That could be possible, but I think if the thing is, if Daemon is the one that's getting kind of taken out of King's Landing, I don't know. Let's look it up real quick. Thought it was from Dragonstone, though. Yeah, I think it's Dragonstone. Yeah. Yeah, he tries to steal an egg from Dragonstone, is what happens. Someone in another video wondered if they strangled the baby, didn't notice it in the episode. I don't think so. I'd have to rewatch it though, but I don't think so. I love the first episode. I must say they send 6 episodes for screeners, which is unusual and denotes a slow burn. Agreed. Macer's definitely murdered the baby and made viscous consent to them killing the queen. Agreed. I think so. I think that's fair. Might have to go Tyrion on your parents for getting Dishonor. That's what I'm saying. That's how many episodes before the time skip? I would say at least 3. I would say at a minimum, I think after the end of episode 3. But I definitely could think like House of the Stag thought, maybe like a 50-50 split. I wanted to be hyped for Rings of Power, but I'm not. Hugo, that's kind of how I feel. I want it to be good because Lord of the Rings is something that I'm very close to. Like, it's one of those things where I watch it once a year, right? Now, the last couple times I've been watching it, the once a year thing, have not been good times, but they've helped me through some times. So, I want it to be good, but I don't know. And we're gonna talk about the trailer in this stream. We might talk about it now. I don't know, but Rings of Power to me just seems like it's pushing a lot of agendas. Whether you feel one way or the other, I just feel like you can't deny that they're pushing some agendas. Overall, look at the last trailer. It just didn't feel like Lord of the, like what was the music they were playing in the background? Like, well, it didn't fit at all. But we'll talk about that a little later. But I hated the latest trailer, trying to keep an open mind. Agreed. Jesse, that's kind of how I'm going into it. I'm trying to be like open with it, trying to give it a chance, but like in the back of my head, like I just don't have high hopes. So I'm just glad they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. At least they can't ruin that. Well, yes and no, I guess, on that, Jesse, because maybe it would be better with what they're trying to do, but I don't know. I wonder what will be better than the Rings of Power or The Hobbit. That's a good question. I personally don't hate The Hobbit. I thought The Hobbit was pretty, like, okay. It wasn't as good as Lord of the Rings, but I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. Yeah, so that's one thing we're going to talk about, Jesse, is the timeline. Because the Second Age is something where you have a lot of singular events or things that happen that are very impactful to the Third Age and beyond. But then there's like a time of almost peace for like 1,000 years, and then we come back to it. Yeah, it's interesting. Lord of the Rings is even superior to Song of Ice and Fire, in my opinion, much so. It saddens me that Rings of Power is looking so bad. So, I think that's fair. I think that's a decent argument. Like saying Lord of the Rings is better than A Song of Ice and Fire, just based on the fact that Lord of the Rings is complete. Like, I can't argue that opinion. Personally, I do like A Song of Ice and Fire better. I like a lot more of the grayer elements to A Song of Ice and Fire and more of the political intrigue. But I love Lord of the Rings all the same. Even though I love a lot more of the villains in Lord of the Rings than I do the, like, good guys, I guess. Like, the Witch King will always be one of my favorite villains in anything. That being said, I did enjoy The Hobbit. Love to see it. I love the Tolkien world, but the thing is the Rings of Sauer. Oh, boy. Ready to see more Corlys. I agree. Corlys is one of my favorite characters this time period. And we really didn't see too much of him in episode 1, but I'm hoping we get more of him and his character. Agreed. Viserys, that is another great thing. Viserys is a character that's very much in the books. We don't see a lot of him. He's a character where everyone describes him as a pushover, and he really has no respect. Like, as a reader, you just don't respect Viserys at all. You don't understand Viserys as a character. He just seems like an idiot. And I love that in the first episode, they made him make a lot of tough choices, and you see where he's coming from as a character. The Hobbit is a terrible movie series. It's slapsticks comedy, not an epic series like Lord of the Rings was. The Dwarf King goes to battle on a pig. Hey, he was riding a boar. Yeah, I agree, Hugo. I think one of the bad elements of that series was it didn't need to be a trilogy. The Hobbit as a movie could have been one movie, maybe 2. It was never meant to be a trilogy. It's what, 250, 300 pages at most on The Hobbit. So it just didn't need to be that long. I don't know. Like The Hobbit to me had good things in it. There were certain things that I liked, but there was a lot of things that I was like, well, okay, this is kind of weird, and it just seemed kind of prolonged to a degree, which is something that The Hobbit did wrong. But the one thing I can say about The Hobbit is, at the very least, The Hobbit kind of felt like Lord of the Rings. Like the world still kind of felt like we were in that world, which is something that Rings of Power has not given me yet. Rings of Power has not felt like Lord of the Rings or in Middle Earth whatsoever. It just feels like something completely different. Viz is kind of, no, I agree. Viz is definitely kind of weak, but we understand why he is that way a bit better on the show. That is also a very good first scene, or best favorite scene from the first episode. I'm trying to think, what would be my favorite moment of episode 1? I think I like the scene with Rhaenyra's mother when she like is, passed, and they're kind of waiting to, have the dragon do the thing. And Daemon kind of is giving Rhaenyra some good advice to be kind of strong and to be the one to do it. And I think it's really good. It's good character building for not only Rhaenyra, but also Daemon and who he is as a character. And I just like that scene, right? So, I don't know. That was my thing. You also have the callbacks to Daenerys, of course, with the Dracarys. So I thought that was pretty good. Bothered me that they said that Esgaroth was on the Anduin. Like, why? Hey, this is what I'm saying about Rings of Power. Okay? Rings of Power is a story that if you're going into it and you're trying to have an open mind, you can't compare it to the lore because it's not following the lore. I've talked about this many times. If we've got a 2-minute trailer and I can already see a bunch of inaccuracies when it comes to lore purposes, what I'm going into with Rings of Power is I'm hoping they made a decent story that makes sense. It might not fit into the lore, but hopefully it is a good story. But yeah, I still haven't watched the first episode of House of the Dragon. I'm waiting till more episodes pile up. That's a fair thing to do, Hugo. It's fair. Personally, I can understand that, honestly. I don't feel The Hobbit was as fluffed as people say. Most of the filler and changes were from the appendices and did occur. The only real addition to The Hobbit was Tauriel and Legolas. That's true, but there's a lot of things that I think were just we didn't need, right? There was a lot of things where I'm like, okay, this is whatever, but did we need this, right? Did we need it? Tauriel and Legolas, when you think about their additions to The Hobbit, they add a good amount of runtime. There's a lot of things that are built off of their characters in the second and third movies. That's how I feel exactly, Matthew. I agree, Hugo. I am someone that really likes the Tolkien kind of everything he's really done. And for me, it's hard to see kind of his work taken to a different place because I can't say fully yet. But when I watch the series, it's going to be something in the back of my mind. What are they doing with his work that to me he probably would never have done? So that's going to be something to talk about when we get to that point of it. But yeah, so since we're already talking about Rings of Power, let's talk about the trailer. So the trailer was bad again. I think it was bad. I think the last trailer was slightly better, just based upon the fact that it seemed like they started to lean into more of what the story was about. But they've done this now for 3 trailers in a row where there's some big evil, which we all know has to be Sauron, but it's they're making it so ambiguous. I just don't I don't know. And the whole idea that it's Galadriel's going on this adventure or something to find Sauron. But when you realize, with lore-wise, what Sauron is doing in the Second Age, it seems really weird. The trailer's music didn't make any sense to me. It didn't really fit Lord of the Rings. It sounds good water. Get some good water in your shower. And some other scenes just bothered me. Like you have Galadriel with some people, and it's snowing, and one of them falls down, and somebody goes to help them, and Galadriel's like, "No, we don't have time for this. Like, or we must keep going." It's like, just pick the dude up. Like, what? I don't know. It just seems so off with how characters should be, in my opinion. Again, we don't really know the story. Really. I mean, the story we know is in the Second Age. It has something to do with Sauron, but I don't know. Who do you think the Meteor Man is? Is it going to be Gandalf? Do you think the Balrog is a flashback to the First Age, or the Balrog's Durin's Bane from Moria? Because those are deal breakers for me. I think the Balrog has to be a flashback. If the Balrog is not a flashback for the show, more or less, or Balrog from Durin's Bane, right? It could be from Moria, but from when that occurs and where the story is currently, that doesn't make any sense, really. Like, Durin's Bane would have to happen quite a bit later in the show, so unless they're teasing something much later in the show, it doesn't make any sense. So it has to be a flashback. If it's not a flashback, they've just completely broken canon. Like, they've just broken it where it's like, because that's the thing, in the Second Age, there is no other Balrogs outside of Durin's Bane. There is no other Balrogs anywhere else. So if they just poof a Balrog into existence, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, that is definitely something that will definitely turn me off. And I love the Balrogs, right? Like, Durin's Bane, another one of my favorite, like, villain type characters. Even though we don't get any lines from him, I just think he looks badass. I don't even watch the shows anymore. I'm just going to go into it, and if I can't stand it, then I'm not going to watch it. I know this is going to be a shit show, and I'm glad Tolkien isn't alive to see this. Agreed. I want to give it... I don't want to completely trash it before I've even seen it. That's my only thing on that. It seems like they will make Galadriel overpowered just like Peter Jackson's Galadriel, or Peter Jackson did. I think the problem for me is, at least in the Peter Jackson stuff, Galadriel had, like Jesse says, has a ring of power, and it makes sense to why she has this kind of strength. But she's just a completely different character in the show, it seems like. They're going for this warrior princess thing, and I just don't... It doesn't work for me. Like, Galadriel is supposed to be this very high, like, figure. Like, she's very powerful, but she doesn't get involved in a lot of these things to that degree, and she's not like a common soldier. So it just drives me the wrong way. Agreed, Gryffindor. And my thing there is, as well, is how are you going to make a show on the Second Age without the Silmarillion? Like, majority of our information on the Second Age comes from that. So it's very odd to me. I just don't know why that was the choice. Like, of all the things you could have done that you would have had more information on, whether that be with Lord of the Rings or anything, I think something like The Witch King's Rise. If any of you guys have played The Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth, The Rise of the Witch King, telling that kind of a story and kind of the fall of Arnor and the western kind of side of Gondor would have been something that you could, A, tie into Lord of the Rings much better, because you have the Witch King, who's a very important figure, and also kind of gives you a lot more context as to why men are so weak during the Third Age, when Sauron kind of creeps back up and becomes a big threat during the events of Lord of the Rings. So to me, it just seems like a really weird choice. And also, when you look at the Second Age, for the most part, is actually fairly peaceful. You just have these instances where you have like 2 or 3 wars that get kind of shut down by Numenor, and then Sauron eventually kind of does... Okay, we're gonna get into... I'm not gonna say spoilers, but eventually something happens, and then, yeah. It's a very peaceful time for the most part. Before I read the books, I believe that Galadriel was a goddess of Middle-earth with power equivalent to Sauron, as some sort of Lady of Light. That's the impression the films give. Yeah, the films very much make her more powerful to a degree, whereas in the book she's not that powerful, but she's still a very powerful being. She's just not to that level. I agree with both of you. I think there's kind of a middle ground where I think the movie really played up to Galadriel's power, but I do think, like, in the book, my interpretation anyway, is she was a very strong entity, but she was not on the same level as like a Sauron type character or something like that. I can agree with you on that, Hugo, on how you're talking about how she's overpowering Sauron. The only thing I can say there is that Sauron wasn't really at full strength. That would be the only thing that I would say there. But again, I don't really like the way the Hobbit films did that scene in general. Agreed, Matthew, and that's kind of something that I've looked at, and I just don't like it. Right? Like, why? My thing is, right, when you're doing this movie or doing a series, your first priority should be, is the story good? Or what we're doing, is it good? It shouldn't be about, are we telling something with this motivation included, with this, this, and this, like a checklist. That's kind of what Rings of Power feels like to me personally. Also, hi, Loyalty, how are you? No worries on Better Late Than Never, or whatever that, you're here. You love to see it. But is Galadriel avenging Finrod following a good motivation for her character in the show? Didn't she and Celeborn dip from I can't say names in Middle Earth, Beleriand pretty early in the first stage? Maybe I'm not remembering correctly. I will say, when you get into the first stage, I don't know the most amount of knowledge, but I do know that the way they are framing Galadriel's brother dying is not how it happens in any of the ebooks, right? So there is no situation in the books where her brother is actively hunting for Sauron and then gets ambushed and killed or something. Like, there's situations where her brothers are in a battle or they're like in something and they die, but they're not hunting for Sauron or like tracking, and no, like that never really happened. So that's another thing that's not really canon. And I'm not even sure what brother she's talking about, just based upon the information that we're given. Like, yeah, Hugo says so Finrod is Galadriel's brother who was killed by Sauron. That does happen, but it's just the way that the way I guess it was phrased in the trailer made it seem really off, because it's not like the way that they like are saying that like her brother died is not really the way it happened. BTW, Greece, have you played War in the North, and what do you think about it story-wise? I really like it. So, or not, okay. I like the story. I think mechanically it has some issues. But the story, I think, is really good, because this is something I've always loved about Lord of the Rings, and it's something I had big questions on when I watched the movies. But the idea of exploring other things going on in the North, right? So, when the War of the Rings going on, right, and in the movies do a very bad job of this, where this is an entire continent war, where you have wars going on in Lorien, and not Middle Earth, Mirkwood, with Erebor. There's more things going on, right, than just Gondor versus Mordor. Yes, this is the big one on center stage or whatever, but Sauron strategically does this so all the Free Peoples can't unite, kind of how they did with the Last Alliance. It's something that I think is very smart by Sauron to do. Sauron kills, yes. Yes, agreed, Hugo, agreed. So my thing with like Finrod is that yes, he gets killed by Sauron, but to me it's my thing of like the way that they kind of did it in the trailer, where she's talking about like, yeah, he was tracking down Sauron and all these things. Not really how Finrod like died or whatever. It was like, it was more kind of like just like a battle type thing, and yeah. I think during the timeline of the series, yeah, Gondor does not exist yet. Gondor will probably not exist until like maybe the end of the show. I don't know how far back they're going. To piggyback on the woke topic, it feels disingenuous when they shoehorn a narrative into an established. Agreed. That is my biggest problem. It's like, if you want to make a story with your topics or this or that, do a completely like different story, right? Like make up your own thing, right? Because Tolkien, when he's writing, had his own set of themes and own ideas that you're changing those to fit your own kind of stuff, I guess. Yeah, so this is the whole thing, Gryffindor, with why I don't understand why they did this without the Silmarillion rights. Because the Second Age info on the appendices were pretty thin. Like, they're not, that great. And the Silmarillion goes into pretty good detail on what happens in the Second Age, and they don't actually have the rights to it. So the whole idea here is like, well, are they going to start doing things like adding Belrogs when there were no Belrogs in the Second Age, really? Besides Durin's Bane, of course. So, yeah, that's kind of my problem there. Yeah, I agree. I think that's why I always enjoyed the game, just because it's a different viewpoint on a different part of the world, as you said. Yeah, that is one of my favorite things about kind of the War of the Ring and all that, is that when you look at the book and you kind of look at everything that actually happened outside of like the movie, there's just a lot more going on, and it was just a massive event on a huge scale, really. But yeah. So let me think. Are there anything other things I want to talk about with Rings of Power on the trailer from my recollection of it? I'm still waiting for an open world Middle Earth game and Game of Thrones. Agreed. It amazes me that those haven't been done. The most open world Middle Earth game we've gotten is like Lego Lord of the Rings. That's the best Lego game. You can't convince me otherwise. The stories of the Second Age are the least complete in the book. I think that's the problem. That's also true. That's also true. Have you guys heard? So this is what I think is one of the most interesting things. Is they're doing a video game based on the Mines of Moria, but it's going to be in, I think, the Fourth Age. That is the thing that like blew my mind. It's like you're going to do a story, or you're going to do a video game in the Mines of Moria, but not during the Third or Second Age when it actually makes sense. You do it in the Fourth Age. Weird. I just want to talk about that, but I don't like the inclusion of hobbits, but I'm sure that's been talked about to death. Yeah, hobbits were off doing their own fucking thing, or I don't even know if they were even a thing at that point. Like, there's literally, like, it's specifically said the hobbits did nothing of note before like the Third Age. So yeah, and if you ask the showrunners, they say, well, these aren't hobbits, they're Harfoots. Harfoots are just hobbits. I don't know. I like the costumes in Rings of Power, and the orcs look good. I thought the orcs did look good. I will say that. Costumes, I think the costumes were okay. I don't think they're anything special, but I thought they were okay. I thought they were satisfactory, right? I have no problems with the costumes, but I don't think they were anything special for me. There is a Fourth Age mod for Rome Total War. There's a mod for everything in Rome Total War, I swear. Every time I bring something about like a game, you guys are like, Rome Total War, it's got a mod. It's like, okay. I'm trying to think. So I watched the Ring of Power trailer like a couple hours ago because I knew I wanted to kind of talk about it a little. My idea. So another thing, again, I haven't done a lot of research into what Rings of Power is going to be on. I'm trying to base it just off trailers and what logically it should be about. Why are the hobbits in it? Do any of you guys know why are the Harfoots or the hobbits in the show? Like, what is their role going to be? Have any of you listened to the soundtrack for Rings of Power yet? I have not at all. Because that like bothers me. Like, I just don't understand why the hobbits are in there. I don't know what their role is going to be yet. I also don't know when is this taking place, right? In the Second Age, are we starting with... So my idea here would be, if they're saying that Galadriel's kind of avenging her brother, or whatever, is this going to be like after the wars with Sauron in the Second Age? Is it going to be like picking up towards maybe the second one? Or are we just going to pick up with Sauron gets defeated, gets captured, and then starts doing his stuff that we're not going to talk about on stream because it's kind of spoilers, and I don't want to get too much into it. Yeah, see, that's my thing. Hobbits did nothing of importance during the Second Age, so, and we know that, so that's my thing. The hobbits are going to meet the Meteor Man, whoever that is, in the Southlands or Mordor. Okay, interesting. I don't know. The hobbits just, there are some things that bother me. Like the hobbits and Galadriel are two things that bother me already off of just the show because they don't make any sense. Like logically, they shouldn't be there, I guess. I don't know. I mean, Galadriel should be there, but she just shouldn't be there in the way she is, I guess. But yeah, that's something that kind of bothers me. It bothers me that like I really don't know where this show's going. Whereas like House of the Dragon made it very apparent that we have a succession crisis. We're going to be in the time of the dragons, and there's going to be some scheming, some politics going on. Rings of the Power, my knowledge of what's going to happen if I had no idea what the Second Age was, I was just going in for it because it was Lord of the Rings, something like that. I literally would be like, oh, so Galadriel thinks that Sauron's still a thing or something, and they're going to try to track him down, and Middle-earth needs to get united for maybe Sauron, but Sauron's never in the trailers or anything. So, yeah. I don't know. Like, that's my problem with the whole premise of Rings of Power. It's named Rings of Power, but yet we've seen no inclination of any Rings of Power. We haven't even been hinted at, really. It just feels very weird. Like, it just feels off. I'm trying to think who did a video. Because I saw the thumbnail. I didn't actually click on the video, but I saw the thumbnail. Hold on. Let's go to YouTube real quick. Go to YouTube. It's one of the Lord of the Rings YouTubers I used to watch a lot back in the day. Let's just do Rings of Power trailer reaction. Okay, I can't even find what I wanted to find, but I don't know. Galadriel will be fighting with a sword in the show. LOL, I'm looking forward to see that, even if it's just to talk trash of it. Fair, Hugo, fair. I like the casting for Galadriel, fair. I think she was a solid casting. I just don't like what they're going to do with the character, I don't think. Matthew, you're a disturbed individual. How come we always have a nice, like, good time here? Like, we're all, figuring it out here, and somebody's got to say something whack. Just some wild shit. I'm fine with the casting. It's a portrayal that I question. Agreed. That is exactly kind of where I'm at. I feel like they've done a decent job with casting, but portrayal is where we'll see. Fun fact, the entire Fellowship of the Ring are virgins. I hope they don't. Oh, boy. What is going on? What is going on? Why do you guys, like, get to that hour mark or something, and you're like, hey, let's go wild. Let's go wild. Okay, all right. Few sex scenes into I don't think they will, Jesse, but, Frodo is 50 years old in the books, and BTW. That is correct. Keeping it light, Matthew. Y'all just get wild sometimes, like sometimes, like, I just question myself. Where do you guys start drinking? I mean, Matthew, I'm gonna be honest. My boy Frodo, he's having some pains from getting stabbed, and here's Matthew. He's like, the reason he went on that fucking boat, so he can get some of that Galadriel. That's what goes through Matthew's head right now. He's like watching House of the Dragon, and he's like, bruh, can't wait till Rhaenyra gets to her wedding night, and then she figures out her husband's doesn't really want the women. That's what goes through your mind, Matthew. Tolkien did not believe in premarital sex. I mean, to be fair, back then most people thought that, so we're kind of in a very new age where, like, premarital sex is for the most part, like, the norm, I guess. Because back then, like in the when did he write the Lord of the Rings, or when was he like doing all that? Like I would say even in the 40s, 50s, anywhere in that like time period, like it was very much premarital sex was not in the norm, I guess. He had Númenórean princes living centuries without marrying or fathering bastards. Would not happen. George R. R. Martin stories, bro, there's bastards everywhere. Everywhere, brother. Like, there's fluids going everywhere in GRM stories, you know? People just like, they can't go a day, man. They can't go a day. They are some horny bastards, okay? And we get great descriptions of how Theon does some things. No, House of the Dragon has hit me yet. Whatever. And I wouldn't cheat on my girl, sir. Okay, Matthew, you just gotta stop. Here's a nasty quote for you guys. It's said that the skill of the dwarves is in their hands rather than their tongues. Oh God. Oh, y'all gotta stop. Oh, you gotta stop. That's actually that's a good point to think about. Will they do scenes like in God explicitly showing explicit scenes between elves? I don't think so. No. Bubblegum Crash, fluids and food. That is correct. We get our food descriptions. We get our fluids going all over the room. There are two things in life that we know we're getting from George R. R. Martin, and it's those two. We're getting food descriptions to the point where you're like sitting there like, I'm hungry now, okay? And then we also get some scenes where you got like Daenerys getting fingered. Like, you know, George R. R. Martin's a guy that writes when he's hungry and when he's horny. So, you know, that's just what happens. You know, it's what happens. All right, let me think of anything else I want to talk about with House of the Dragon or Rings of Power before we end this stream out. Look forward to stream after Dance of the Dragons, or not Dance of the Dragons, after House of the Dragon comes out. Look for that on after episode 2, probably like a 9:30, 10 o'clock stream. We'll do a little 30, 40-minute talker about it. And then Rings of Power. I don't know when Rings of Power comes out. When's Rings of Power come out? Like the 27th, maybe? I will be doing a video on that. When it comes out, we'll be talking about that. Probably won't do a stream for Rings of Power. Well, we can discuss it like on Wednesday, probably next week. But I'll do a video on that. Look forward to big announcement for you guys. Watch the Ned Nashara video tomorrow, because if you're a Ned Nashara person, you're going to be triggered by that video. Very triggered. Because like the first 10 minutes, it's a normal video. First 10 minutes, you're like, okay, it's just the Grease Goblin, you know, he's just giving his analysis and all this. And that 10-minute mark sparks, and I start doing why I don't like it. It's a good 20-minute rant. So you guys are getting a 30-minute video tomorrow. So I hope you guys like that. And then you're getting, what else are we doing this week? I did a Jon Snow. I did the Stone Dragon Theory, which is a different one than normal, where I usually just talk about how Jon's spirits kind of warged into Ghost. But yeah. Grease dribbling down chin. Agreed. Hey, I think George is more dirty-minded than me. Hey, I think so. Why did they give Daemon ED? Hey, man, everybody's got their problems, you know? Daemon can't be good at everything. I admit I often don't like the explicit scenes in George R. R. Martin's books. They often feel very forced if George R. R. Martin just wanted to write sex for the sake. Agreed. I agree. Sometimes we just don't need it, but he wants it, so, you know. Thanks for the stream, Goblin. Looking forward to all the House of the Dragon talk. Cheers. Thank you being in the stream, and always more. Yeah, I just don't like Ashara, okay? Like, so many, like, things come out of Ashara, and it's like, brothers, she is mentioned 5 times. 5. Moon Boy is named more than. Don't even get me started on Ashara. Don't get me started. Y'all are gonna have a nice 30-minute video to watch tomorrow, and you're gonna see a complete breakdown of me. Like I just have a breakdown towards it. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I hope Rings of Power is better than I think it's gonna be, and I'm excited for House of Dragon Part 2 or Episode 2. So, bye guys. I will see ya in the next one. Also, watch the House of the Dragon video that just came out today. Watch it. I will